Tempus here, and welcome to 10-man normal Warmaster Blackhorn, the 6th boss in the new Dragon Soul raid. The fight takes place on a gunship, which you will have to protect from damage all through Phase 1. About every 35 seconds or so, Goriana, that's the big dragon in the sky, will use Twilight Onslaught, which fires a large projectile somewhere on the gunship at random. This is shown by a large purple vortex on the ground. Once it reaches the ship, it will deal 800,000 damage split between players within its area and the ship. During Phase 1, you will have to deal with adds. Lots and lots of adds. Every so often, Drakes will drop off 2 adds onto the platform, a Twilight Elite Dreadblade and a Twilight Elite Slayer, both of which will need to be tanked, with one tank taking the Dreadblade and the other taking the Slayer. This is because they each apply a stacking dot. The Dreadblades will apply degeneration to everyone in a frontal cone, so it needs to be tanked faced away from everyone else, while the Slayer will apply a brutal strike onto its current target. Both adds will use Blade Rush to charge a random raid member, dealing damage to everything in a line to that player, so everyone should be spread out to avoid taking additional damage. While fighting these adds, you will also have to deal with Twilight Assault Drakes, which will fire Twilight Barrage, which acts as a smaller version of Twilight Onslaught, dealing only 200,000 damage spread between players in the purple spiral. If no players soak it, the damage goes straight to the gunship, so everyone should be trying to take these 2 or more at a time to protect the gunship. The more Drakes are up, the more you're going to have to soak, so killing the Drakes has to be a priority. The final add in Phase 1 is a Twilight Sapper. This add will be dropped off onto the deck every so often, and he will stealth, only to reappear slightly later and make a run for the back of the ship. If he makes it there, he will explode, dealing 20% of the ship's health in damage, and some damage to everyone near the explosion, so he needs to be killed quickly. However, he can also be death gripped, stunned, and slowed, so he shouldn't be too tough to deal with. After 3 waves of adds are dead, Blackhorn jumps onto the ship and Phase 2 begins. In Phase 2, you no longer have to protect the ship from damage, and you should avoid all damage wherever possible. When the fight starts, you will have Goriana launch Twilight Flames onto your ship, which deals tons of damage and leaves a patch of fire which will fade after a while. Once you get her to 25% health, she will run off and you will only have to fight Blackhorn. Blackhorn gets progressively harder with Vengeance stacking up, increasing his damage by 1% for every 1% of health he loses. He will also cast Devastate on his current tank, which will deal a large amount of damage and reduce the target's armor by 20%. This effect stacks, so tanks will need to swap as and when their stacks fall off. His most annoying ability is Disrupting Roar, which will deal medium damage to everyone and also silence any casters within 10 yards for 8 seconds. So casters will have to stand more than 10 yards away from him. His final ability is Shockwave. This is a frontal cone AoE that deals tons of damage and stuns everyone caught in it by 4 seconds. He will usually turn to face a random raid member when he uses this, so having people spread out as much as possible will help to limit movement. Keep in mind, the closer you are to him, the easier it is to get away, so casters will have to keep more than 10 yards away, but not too far so they can still dodge this. So, in Phase 1, everyone stacks on the purple swirls on the ground to soak the damage. We found it easier to have the tanks stand still with the mobs next to each other to avoid the cleave, while at the same time, any extra AoE helped to down the other add. We also found it best to always kill the Dreadblade first, as it uses a cleave, making it more dangerous. Tanks will need to alternate which add they take so their debuff can fall off. So if one tank takes the Dreadblade first time, then he should take the Slayer the next time, and vice versa. The Drakes will get harpooned by the NPCs onto the ship, so that when that happens, DPS should nuke them down, and this will help to minimize the Twilight Barrage. When a sapper lands, everyone should swap to him and nuke him down quickly. Make sure to use slows, stuns, and death grips to give yourselves as long as possible to kill him. In Phase 2, range should nuke down Goriana to 25% to get her out of the fight. Everyone should be spread around the boss with range 10 yards away to avoid the Disrupting Roar, and everyone should be aware of the Shockwave, as it will deal large damage at the start as well as stunning, but as the fight goes on, the Shockwave damage will be increasing constantly. Tanks will need to swap between each other and have defensive cooldowns ready for later in this fight, when the damage is peaking. Bloodlust should also be used later in the fight to burn him down the last bit as fast as possible. That concludes this fight. Thanks for watching and good luck with your kill.